There's no stopping the Star Wars train. After Disney's $4 billion purchase of Lucasfilm Limited, the House of Mouse put the full weight of its creative and marketing strength into the franchise, upending decades worth of content in favor of wiping the slate clean so that new stories could be told and new canons established. Personal feelings aside, it was a smart business decision that has brought in a large influx of cash from a new television show, comics, books, and 2 new theme parks. The acquisition's weakest link, however, has been video games. Not so much on the mobile space, where you'll find free downloadables with all sorts of in-app purchases. Current consoles have been bereft of content despite Electronic Arts being gifted a 10-year licensing deal, which has produced only 2 original games for Xbox One and PlayStation 4, Star Wars Battlefront and its maligned though steadily serviceable sequel, Battlefront 2. Nintendo Switch owners would have to settle for the wonderfully enjoyable Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast from 2002. 6 years into EA's somewhat mismanaged deal, and it finally bears fruit worth noticing. Respawn's Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, an offline story-driven action-adventure game that doesn't have loot boxes. You know, the thing people were asking for from the beginning. Does it bring balance to Star Wars video games as a whole? That's debatable. Jedi Fallen Order is set 5 years after Revenge of the Sith, and the newly minted Galactic Empire consolidates power by imposing its tight grip on systems originally protected by the Republic during the Clone Wars. With the Jedi nearly extinct as a result of Palpatine's purge, the scant survivors are forced into hiding, going as far as cutting themselves off from the Force to protect themselves from the Empire's hunters, the Inquisitors. Cal Kestis is one of those Jedi, eking out an existence on the planet Bracca as a salvager, stripping down the remains of derelict Republic and Separatist capital ships. When an accident causes Cal to use the Force to protect a friend, he's immediately preyed upon by 2 Inquisitors and barely escapes with his life, thanks to the last-minute intervention by the 2-person crew of the Mantis. Ser Junda, a former Jedi Master, takes Cal to Bogano, where a sealed Jedi temple reveals a powerful secret, a holocron containing the names of Force-sensitive children taken from the archives before Order 66. Cal must follow in the footsteps of Jedi Eno Cordova to unlock the temple and secure the information before the Empire can get it.
Yeah, ages.
Breaking her will be big money. All right, let's go.
Cal's quest will take him across a small portion of the Star Wars galaxy to planets both new and familiar, where he encounters traversal puzzles, aggressive native fauna, and of course, the Empire. Like the Republic clones, Fallen Order was made from a concoction of gaming's best and brightest, cherry-picking mechanics from different video games into a surprisingly workable hodgepodge. Cal swings across vines, wall runs, and climbs across cliff faces above perilous gaps just like Nathan Drake did in the Uncharted series. Combat offers a welcomely fresh, more believable, and outstanding approach to lightsaber dueling. It is both deliberate and fast-paced, owing to its inspiration from the sword-centric Sekiro. And finally, a Metroid-like level progression system features weakened walls, locked doors, and raised bridges that can only be bypassed after the character has reacquainted himself with former Force abilities and upgraded his robot pal, BD-1. For the better part of the game, all these systems work just fine. Great even. Over time, however, I saw cracks form in a surprisingly delicate facade. Jedi Fallen Order has a considerable amount of technical problems that significantly hurt the incredibly strong atmosphere. Transversal is great. Wall running across gaps to avoid dangerous drops or hazardous areas is a fun way to move around, and Cal looks cool doing it. Nothing destroys the momentum, though, more than jumping off from a wall to grab onto a ledge, only to see Cal slip through the model and fall to his death. There were plenty of times where I thought I had the timing of the jump just right, only to fail for unexplained reasons. The absolute bane of my enjoyment were the times when Cal had to slide down an icy or muddy path. It was almost impossible to stay on the track without flying off at every sharp turn. I had to retry one of them on the planet Zepho about 8 times before getting it right, struggling to figure out why the control was so piss poor that the slightest angling of the analog stick would result in failure. Natural barriers and bumpers would have gone a long way to prevent this stupid issue, especially with as frequently as it occurs. With combat, I want to say that Jedi Fallen Order features the best and most realized version of lightsaber combat in a Star Wars game. No other title has accurately depicted what a lightsaber duel must feel like between two experienced combatants. As such, the Sekiro approach makes absolute sense and is the game's smartest design choice. The lightsaber has no problem performing one-hit kills against thin-skinned planetary fauna and stormtroopers that attack you with blasters. Critters are cut into pieces, leaving behind gruesome cauterized chunks of animal flesh, and the lightsaber can direct blaster bolts back to their targets. Or you could just run up to them and slash them in the face, whichever works for you. Battles are more challenging when animals with thicker hides join the fray, as well as ranked stormtroopers, purge troopers, bounty hunters, and the inquisitors, because they are far more adept and wield weapons made to withstand the lightsaber. These encounters become a contest to see who can break the other's guard through repeated swings and parrying. Like Sekiro, Cal and melee enemies have a guard meter that has to be drained in order to open them up for an attack. Parrying is an important skill to develop because deflecting the enemy's attack at the last minute instantly breaks their guard, a strategy that opponents are looking to take advantage as well. The result is a dance between bladed weapons that at its best makes the Empire's troopers far more confident in their training and abilities. I love that even the most basic stormtrooper can be perceived as a threat, and learning how to negotiate encounters makes Star Wars combat far more engaging and exciting than it ever was. Also, it's really funny to hear the stormtroopers panic once they're the only ones left alive. The thing is, Jedi Fallen Order feels less polished in its gameplay than those that inspired it. Sekiro and Dark Souls are incredibly difficult games, and while you've got to be sick of hearing it by now, they are also fair to some extent. Fallen Order tries to subscribe to that philosophy, but its combat engagements tell a different story. Standalone encounters with purge troopers and bosses are exciting because there's little to distract you. What I hated were the situations where you'd be up against several melee stormtroopers, a couple purge troopers, and two blaster-wielding troopers who take potshots at you from a distance. In its early hours, the game develops a problem with crowd control, and Cal doesn't necessarily have the means to deal with large groups until you have unlocked certain abilities in the Force-rich skill tree. Parrying enemy blows when you're surrounded on all sides can be frustrating because it's hard to develop the laser-like focus needed to time parries and evasions when stormtroopers shoot at you with blasters and rocket launchers from off-camera. Eventually, you'll unlock force powers that are really helpful in dealing with mobs, though they're pretty uninspired at the end of the day. You won't be pulling down Star Destroyers from the sky, but you can create some breathing room using push, pull, and a stasis power that slows enemies to a brief crawl. Your usage of the Force is governed by a meter that depletes so quickly that you never really get used to them as often as you'd like. Only by striking enemies does it refill, but battles often get so chaotic, especially during boss fights, that it's easy to forget that you have these force powers. What makes absolutely no sense to me is that Cal's power attacks, performed by pressing the triangle button on the PS4 controller, is tied to the force meter as well. So its usage is severely limited, and that feels a little unfair. It bugged me that throughout the adventure, Cal never really gets stronger. He's more adept with the Force, sure, but his damage output never really increases. You can spend 3 skill points to unlock an increased damage boost, but honestly, if there was a difference, I could hardly tell what it was. This is most apparent during boss fights that are the same tests of endurance in Bloodborne, where you have to manage flurries of attacks and wait for the right time to strike, that window almost always being too short. I played most of the game on Jedi Knight, the equivalent to normal difficulty, and found it really hard to get that right rhythm. After losing to a boss repeatedly, I switched to story mode and found it a little insulting. Story mode almost makes everything worse, albeit for different reasons. The lightsaber does more damage, lending itself to more hack and slash gameplay, and enemies are less aggressive, quote unquote, which really means they just stand around and look stupid. With as much trouble as I had, I strongly advocate that Jedi Fallen Order is best played on Jedi Knight in order to respect the philosophy towards lightsaber combat. I wish I had the option to tweak the difficulty sliders myself to create a better, more tailor-made experience. Proving more difficult than trying to figure out the combat timing, my experience with Jedi Fallen Order was hurt by a laundry list of bugs, glitches, and game crashes. Me thinks this is a result of Electronic Arts acting up again, forcing the game out the door so as to capitalize on the release of the upcoming Rise of the Skywalker film in December. For a game this deep into the PlayStation 4's life cycle, it's odd to see that texture pop-up is still an issue in light of Titanfall 2 looking gorgeous and performing really well from start to finish. Texture loading is at its most notable during cutscenes, a shame considering that they are really well produced and sport some really impressive lighting effects. More ruinous to the gameplay are the instances of character jank and glitching. Character models do this frequently, hilariously zipping around the map to hit their marks as if they missed the staging call. I saw this happen a lot after using meditation points to rest, which respawns all enemies like Dark Souls. In some situations, the characters popped into existence, their bodies stuck in the classic T-pose for a moment before starting their idle animations. And call me crazy, but I swear these problems grew over time. I played for about 10 hours straight one day, and in that time I encountered freezing as the game loaded stuff ahead of me, noticeable frame rate drops, frequent object pop-in, and 2 crashes within the space of an hour. As far as level progression goes, I don't have much of a problem with it as I did with everything else. Fallen Order has 5 planets, and you'll be visiting them repeatedly as Cal opens himself back to the Force. Whole segments of playable spaces open up, allowing Cal to utilize his new abilities, like double jumping over large drops on the Wookiee planet of Kashyyyk. The in-game map is really smart about guiding you to these new areas with color-coded markers that indicate whether or not you can bypass certain barriers and showing you passages that have yet to be explored. As you upgrade BD1 with the functionality to unlock doors and splice open secure crates, you'll stumble upon many cosmetic upgrades for Cal's lightsaber, his clothing, the Mantis, and BD1 himself. I was pleased to discover that one of the components is the same as the lightsaber I built at the Galaxy's Edge theme park at Disneyland, so now I have to find them all. Fun as that is, it's a bummer that taking the time to venture off the beaten path mostly rewards cosmetic items that have no bearing on the gameplay. Like Darth Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi, there is still good in Fallen Order. I can feel it. A lot of the game's technical problems, like its third-person jank, way too long load screens, and graphical bugs, could hopefully be improved with a patch or two. What I enjoy most is the phenomenal presentation across the board. Unlike The Force Unleashed, Fallen Order greatly benefits from an established visual look and feel of the galaxy between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Fans of the television series Star Wars Rebels will be intimately familiar with a lot of visual elements and species, from Cal's master to the design of the Inquisitors. The story itself is pretty okay as far as an adventure to find a MacGuffin before the Empire does, but it's the moments in between the main plot points that shine brightly. Whether it's a quiet moment on the Mantis, listening to Serjunda relive the horror of Order 66, or watching Cal struggle at his lowest point, it's watching these characters develop and fight through their past trauma that work the best. I enjoyed the cast of characters and felt they developed a great rapport with each other, albeit rather quickly, and turned into a real close-knit Star Wars family. Cal Kestis reminded me too much of Archie Andrews from Riverdale to the point of distraction, but I felt a connection with him nonetheless. Grease, the captain of the Mantis, is fun as the obligatory salty, wisecracking pilot. Forrest Whitaker reprises his role as a younger, less robotic Saw Gerrera, and Dominican-American actress Elizabeth Grulon does an outstanding job as the second sister, her lovely voice lending the character a perfect level of malice and terror that only the Inquisitors could inspire, outside of Darth Vader himself. However, earning his special place in the pantheon of memorable characters is Cal's droid and the breakout star, BD1. A lovable droid that clings to Cal's shoulder until needed, Respawn has designed and animated a character so full of expression, heart, and joy, and he can't even talk. BB-8? More like BB-0.
Failure to turn over this traitor will result in a charge of sedition. Turn yourself in, or everyone present shall face summary execution.
Oh, and the soundtrack is good. No, I take that back. It's impossibly good. There have been a lot of Star Wars games where the soundtrack offers a close approximation of John Williams' score, but Gordy Hobb and Stephen Barton had me convinced that Michael Giacchino had put it all together. The music here adds so much to the story's best beats. The Second Sisters theme song in particular is awesome, and I found the whole thing rather brilliant and inspired, and I anxiously await the opportunity to buy it.
And engineers became scrappers.
In closing, I feel on principle I should be over the moon with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Even with all the negative things I brought up in this review, I strongly feel that it is one of the best Star Wars experiences money can buy. It certainly washes away the bad taste of Force Unleashed too. As much as I struggled with the Seki Dark Souls born gameplay, it offers the best realization of lightsaber combat that I really wanted to get good at. I don't feel it matches the finesse of the From Software titles, but at the end of the day, I can still appreciate it. What really hurts the game overall, though, are its technical problems that cover the product with a notable stain. I'm not ready to place the blame on Respawn, given their track record, so I might chalk it all up to EA doing what it does best, pushing out products to capitalize on synergy and chasing the dollar. If nothing else, Jedi Fallen Order makes a great case that meaningful Star Wars stories can be told in a video game without a constant internet connection or loot boxes.
Easy now.
Got it. I'll get you.
Darkstation gives Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order 3.5 stars.